Well, welcome everyone to the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. There's a call to the public. No, no cards. So the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'd like to take the privy to moving item number 10 to the beginning of our agenda, taking that out of order. And with that, is there a motion to reappoint our judges?
Yes, I would like to make a motion, move that the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee recommend that City Council reappoint judges Francisca Cota, Cynthia Gonzalez, and James Hernandez as judges of the Phoenix Municipal Court for 4-year terms to expire on December 20th, 2023, and judges Walter Jackson and James, Sampanis as judges of the Phoenix Municipal Court for 4-year terms to expire on November 25th, 2023.
Second.
Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Just to let people know that we've evaluated these individuals prior to this meeting. We had a conversation, so we didn't have to go through an interview process for each judge. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Congratulations, the motion passes. Now we're back to consent items. Items 2 to 6, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve items 2 through 6. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. And now we're into information only. I'd like to pull out if we can go ahead and just have item number 8. Oh no, I'm sorry, false alarms. Back to item number 7. Have some questions on item number 7. Hi Chief, how you doing? You know, these are about the false alarms. After reading the report, there were some things that were brought to my attention that other cities have different policies that they have and guidelines for false alarms. I'd like to direct you all to look into maybe creating some type of policies and guidelines for the city of Phoenix to follow when it comes to false alarms. You know, some other cities are having where they're actually a verbal or somebody that actually sees a crime happening, that police are called to the site. If we can look at what the best practices are in the neighborhoods, neighboring cities, and maybe we can adapt some of those policies and guidelines for next meeting.
We'll do that, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not sure if there's any other comments or. All right, thank you so much. And I think that's it for information. There's that was item number 9. No, that was 7.
That was 7.
All right, now we're in information and discussion. We have number 8, if you'd like to come on up. The Academy update.
Good morning, Chairman Nowakowski and members of the subcommittee. My name is Sean Conley, and seated with me is Commander LaRock from Training Bureau. We're very grateful to be able to talk to you today about the innovation, the modernization, and the intelligence with which we're training our officers, our recruits, and our current employees. We're super grateful for this time. We think it's very meaningful, and Commander LaRock's going to go ahead and give you some additional information.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. As the chief pointed out, I'll be giving an update on the Phoenix Regional Police Academy and some of the changes we've made. Part of the reason why we made some changes was we wanted to modernize the Phoenix Police Department's training. We had a high attrition rate in academics. We wanted to address that. Some of the research shows that knowledge acquisition is much higher for some of the surveys from recruits at the end of the academy basically overwhelmingly said that the most important thing to them is that the staff cared about their success. And so with those particular reasons, we've decided to make some changes. We've had recent and some planned changes, and we'll go over those. One of the first things I want to talk about is leadership-based training. We changed that from a military type of training. Part of that reason is because, and a lot of people think the military style promotes discipline, but I say that recruits actually need to have self-discipline. They need to be able to control their emotions. They need to be able to control their fear. We need to train leaders at that level and independent thinkers and not wait to be told what to do. So mentoring, coaching, and teaching, somewhat of a Socratic method, is the measures in which we use out at the academy. This is a huge culture change. It's been a slow process, but it's been well worth it. We also moved to 6 all-Phoenix classes where we have 3 focus areas. The 3 focus areas are mainly critical thinking, decision-making, and communication. With that, with the 6 classes, part of the reason we did that is we really wanted to focus on Phoenix policies and procedures. We wanted to make sure that outside influences didn't affect our philosophy and how we would like to train and our focus areas. We can start de-escalation training earlier, and we can offer less lethal tools for our scenario-based training. So, and they graduate sooner, which is a good thing for us. For the critical thinking and decision-making, we really wanted to modernize the mental part of training. We've always focused on the physical part, but for critical thinking, we really wanted to focus on the brain science and pressure-based training. That hasn't been done before. So with these 2 things, basically with the brain science, it's initial assessment of the brain for the weaknesses and strengths, and then what happens is that they develop personalized exercises and benchmarks for improvement and teaches recruits how to focus on demand. It also mirrors the brain. It gives immediate feedback on what the brain is doing. A lot of times you'll ask the recruits, are you calm? Do you feel pressure? And they'll say, oh yes, I'm calm, but we've never had a tool to measure that. So with that, once we see what the brain's doing, we can use exercises to basically train the brain physiology to be at a calm so that they make better decisions. So it gives them strategies to perform at peak. Also, Olympic athletes and professional athletes have used this technology to help remain calm in stressful environments so they make better decisions. In addition to that, and kind of what parlays into pressure-based training, is we use the brain science with the pressure-based training. And basically what pressure-based training is you have to make quick second decisions. And so we don't want that first experience to be out in the street. We want that to be in a training environment so we can critique, we can give more drills, and help the recruits be successful. The first time they experience fatigue, stress, and adrenaline shouldn't be out on the street. It should be in a training environment so we can help them with tools to be successful. So in our opinion, a calm officer is a confident officer, is a better officer. Communication, we really changed a lot about our communication. One of the things that we wanted to do with communication is focus more on giving them an opportunity to get up in front of people and speak. A lot of complaints about the millennials is that they don't have very good verbal skills, and they don't relate well to people. And so we really wanted to give them an opportunity to stand up and showcase 3 minutes of their time where they're drawing a topic from a hat and they're actually speaking. And what it does, it kind of promotes teamwork, but it also shows where people have come from. It gives you empathy towards their journey, and it relates to what we do out on the street. So years in the past, we've spent time directing them and giving them orders and not engaging in conversation. And now the focus is look people in the eye, engage in conversation, because that's what we do out in the street. The majority of what we do is we're talking and problem solving all day, yet we don't focus on that in the academy, and now we are. So communication is a huge officer safety as well. The other point I'd like to make is if we go around with the attitude in training that everyone's trying to kill us, we miss the verbal cues and the common sense tactics to help ourselves solve problems that are right in front of us. So those are very important things. Another thing that we've done is we've focused on the instructor development course. We've learned through surveys from recruits that a lot of instructors have a lot of knowledge base, but they don't have any teaching skills. We hired an academic specialist to come in and basically train over 500 instructors, and that was really helpful. We had excellent feedback, and it paid off in the long run with how recruits were able to learn better with the academic portion. E-learning is going to be a big part of our future. Why? Part of the reason is published literature shows the least effective method to deliver a curriculum is in the traditional classroom with a PowerPoint and lecture with a PowerPoint. So the attrition rate in the academy has been high for academics, and we wanted to address that issue. In the last century, massive improvements have been made to technology and learning. Research shows that knowledge acquisition was significantly greater among individuals through online learning as opposed to in-person learning. So we learn more because they take ownership of their material rather than a passive receptor of a teacher standing up in the front of the class. So it's more of a didactic teaching environment. So the bottom line is we just want to maximize recruits' focus to reduce attrition. Now in 2020, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a 2-week pre-academy. The Arizona Post, which is our certifying board, they are going to let us do 40 hours of online learning. So we'll start it out with 30 hours, and it's kind of a pilot program to see how that goes. The other thing that we changed is we're going to add some community engagement to that part of the 2-week pre-academy. We have already made some significant strides in our physical fitness. We're going to add the implicit bias. We're going to do 3 classes per year of implicit bias, so every single recruit that goes through our academy can have that opportunity to meet Dr. Marks and go through that phenomenal training that Chief Kurtenbach brought to our agency. Body-worn cameras will be introduced so they can use those in scenarios. We already do community projects. Every recruit class does a community project, but we just wanted to enhance that more with community engagement, so it gets them used to interacting with the community and gets everyone's perspective on policing and what they expect from our police officers. We're also working with Dr. Scott from ASU. I think it's really important with communication that we work with someone in the academia world, and we have an academic specialist in psychology who's going to help us with additional community and communication-based scenarios. In 2021, it's going to be much different. The academy is going to look a lot different. Part of the reason is because we again wanted to address the attrition rate for academics. We wanted to give students that may have issues with studying and kind of understanding the information that's provided to them in such a short amount of time. We wanted to give them more opportunity to be successful. And so with that, we've moved to 400 hours of e-learning. And a few of those classes that we have, such as criminal law, search and seizure, which is all our Fourth Amendment, which is what we primarily do out on the street, laws of arrest, report writing, those will be a hybrid of both e-learning and in-person. We're going to have an educational specialist that's available for recruits. Currently, if you fail 3 tests, you're out. And we want to give people an opportunity to go at a little bit slower pace. They're going to be phenomenal police officers. Maybe academically they struggle a little bit. We need to kind of cater to people with different learning abilities. And so Rio Salado, who provides our testing, they provide everything online for us, and they actually give recruits academic hours for the time spent and classes they've taken out at the academy. They're gonna, they received a Prop 301 grant, so they can help with the curriculum, and so that's gonna be very helpful. So in phase 2, basically, they're gonna do tactical and all their proficiency type training. Those are Arizona Post mandated classes. It's the defensive tactics, the firearms, and the driving track. We're also gonna add our own scenarios to those. So part of the reason is they can bring context to that first phase of academics into the second phase of the training. And during that time, we're gonna have review of our classes that they've taken, so they'll be prepared at the end to take their final exam. So once they're done with phase 2, then they will move into phase 3, which is our field training program. That's gonna be 8 weeks. And new officers will be evaluated weekly. We basically wanted to mirror what we're doing in the academy with our field training programs, so the academy is actually taking oversight of that. Because we feel mentoring, coaching, and teaching is a much better way for people to learn. It keeps them calm. And in fact, I think it's going to reflect on how we actually treat people that we deal with on the street. Phase 4, we're going to return to the academy. Part of the reason is because when it's all theory that they learn the basics in basic training. But we want them to have a little bit of context when they go out in the street, they interact with people, they go on some domestic violence calls, they practice some of their communication skills, come back to the academy. They can kind of reset. We can focus on some areas that they struggle with. And then in addition, we can give them more advanced training. So for example, now they'll have more context. So we've got the active shooter training. We've got small team tactics. We've got mental health, crisis communication scenarios that we can do. Now they have more context from being out on the street. Some crisis entry, etc. So we can kind of work on some of the things that they need improvement, give them a little refresher, and it also gives our field training officers a bit of a break from the rigorous days of training with the same person in the car for 24/7. So that's a good thing. And then we'll move back to the final phase where they'll go back out into the street and they can finish up their training. So we've really tried to make changes that comport with the President's Task Force recommendations on 21st century policing. That's been really the center and the core of this. Some of the benefits is that currently, because we hire enough recruits for 6 classes of 50, we can actually add an extra 100 people by doing 10 classes of 40. And we don't have to add any more resources, which is fantastic for us. And it condenses the training into specific learning sections. And just the reduction of resources for teachers and instructors will be helpful. And the educational support specialists, I think, will really address the attrition issue that we're having out at the academy. So it simplifies our training. With that said, that ends my presentation. I was a little behind on my PowerPoint. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
You know, before I take questions, can you just tell us how many other cities actually train at our facility? Because I think it's really important that we have 6 of those classes that are all Phoenix police officers, just for my colleagues to understand that we are a regional training site.
Yes, we are. We have 12 total classes that go through per year, 2 of which are DPS, and then the rest are different jurisdictions from around the state. DPS has their own, they follow AZ Post standards as well. They have a little different way of training than we do, but that's why we wanted to go to our All Phoenix classes, because we really wanted to focus on what we want to present to our community.
And Councilman Garcia?
When you speak to retention, is it folks that just don't finish the academy? Are they leaving in the middle of the academy? Or?
Yeah, so our number one reason for people failing out of the academy is definitely academics. And that's why we really wanted to we did a lot of research on what was the best way of helping students that learn differently to be successful. And when I read their surveys and they talked about what recruits felt was best for them, and and how they learned best. It was not only that the staff actually cared about their success, but that there was more opportunity to study and learn where they're more focused, rather than sitting in a classroom and having an instructor that wasn't very enlightened. So we feel this is going to be very helpful with our attrition. That seems to be the number one reason.
How are we testing the retention of the material? Is it just based on like a quiz after the training, or is there other process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what's difficult is that there's 585 hours that are mandated with AZ Post that you have to provide those classes. We add another 200 hours onto that. It's a very busy week, constant classes and classroom and proficiency training. And so they sometimes have 5 tests a week, maybe 3 tests on one day. That's very difficult. Whereas the e-learning, what they can do, and the technology's improved so much, but they can actually look at the material and study the material. They have to interact with it, so they're actually physically engaged and involved, and then they test out at that time. So they actually learn the material, can test out of it, and then when they're ready to move on, they can move on. If they don't get some of the answers correct, they can go back and read the material and restudy before they take the second part of that. So once they complete one module and it's completely done, then they can move on to the second one and then the third one, and they can continue on. So with an academic specialist, that's going to really help with some of the attrition that we're having as well, and some of the people that may not move at a fast pace but still are able to grasp the material if they were given a bit longer of an opportunity.
I think it's great that the implicit bias is going to be brought in. I think that's an outstanding question we had, which is, it's great that to hear the new recruits are going to be going through it. What's the cultural awareness piece of it? What does that focus on, and is it similar to?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that. I just wanted to highlight a bit of it in the presentation, but part of it is working with different community groups to be able to understand and be more empathetic when you go out in the street, and to understand maybe where other people come from and what their journey was. And you're meeting people on their worst day sometimes, and so, you know, we're really there to remain calm and to understand the diversity that makes up this amazing city, and just to embrace that. When they're standing up in front of a class on the cultural awareness class, there's a whole curriculum that we follow, but in turn, when they're standing up there picking something out of a hat, it never fails. Every single academy class, there's an emotional response of an amazing journey that some recruit had during their lifetime, and it brings people to tears, quite honestly. And you know, the bottom line is that you have to build community trust, you have to be committed to excellence, and you have to care about people. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing this job, and that's the focus of that class.
Chairman Nowakowski and members of the subcommittee and Councilman Garcia. To add to that, I think it's really important that we have the mindset that we intertwine community engagement with cultural awareness. And so we're super proud of the fact that back in the day, we would have community members come in a sterile classroom and speak to the recruits about their community. Well, we're changing that. We're gonna go out and meet community where they're at with the recruits, and I think immerse ourselves in what is healthy and awesome about the culture and members of our community, and then create that connectivity that way instead of it being in a sterile classroom of life. That, in turn, we believe, through research tells us, it heightens that cultural awareness in addition to the community engagement.
I think, I mean, I'm really excited about going away from militarization and the kind of the direction that we're going. But I have a question pending, and maybe it's for later and not here, but what about the officers that have been recently trained still by kind of what we're trying to get away from, right? 2-3 years ago, or I know we just started hiring, but I don't remember when the last hiring class was, but what about them? Are we gonna try to bring them in at some point and kind of let them know we're trying to do things differently?
Well, that's the great thing about taking over the field training officer program, is we have a great presence with them and relating our basic training with the theories and philosophies of training. And as the new generation comes in this new way of training, it's going to be kind of the majority of thought on how to treat people, how to work with the community. Those are important things. We have amazing officers right now that have that belief. And I think with our in-service training, we've really focused on the communication part of de-escalation, and that's been a huge focus as well on the in-service training. So again, it's a cultural change, and people are getting on board, and it's been great to see.
Chairman Nowakowski and members of the committee and council members, sorry, to get directly to your point, as it relates to, we have basic training and then we have in-service training, and those are the officers that have gone out and experienced life in the policing world, and we bring them back. We're abundantly committed to ensuring, we've already put everybody through implicit bias training, but one of the things that research tells us about bias is that it's a result of overexposure to certain parts of a community. And so we're committed to exposing our officers to what's awesome about some of these communities instead of the perpetual responding to the 911 calls that sometimes they see some of the negative of the community. And I think once we start to frame that mindset and through direction, get them connected to what is awesome and healthy about the community, you'll start to see that mindset shift in those officers that have been out in these communities for some time.
You know, last night I had the privilege of attending a workshop at Brophy. My sons go to Brophy, and there's over 250 people, and it was about the Dreamers and what was happening yesterday at the Supreme Court. And there was about 8 young men and women that stood up and told their story. And it's just amazing to hear their story of how hard they work and how they have to stay on that straight line, because if there's a violation of anything, they can lose their status. And how if they're in a car accident and by chance they're guilty or they have a fender bender that they're the ones that caused it, that they can lose their status, and that everything that they even when they see the lights and the sirens on, they get scared because it's all about losing their status. And it's just amazing to see how these young people are just affected by, you know, politicians, by law enforcement. Even though you're not doing anything, it's just that they're on that edge. And I learned a lot by just listening, and these are some of the most talented young people I've seen, and our future doctors and engineers and lawyers. And it's just amazing to hear their story. And I wish that it was possible for all of us, I mean, to have that opportunity. And I'm really glad that we're thinking outside the box, and that we're not just bringing people to the academy, but now we're taking people out into the community so they can actually not only hear, but see, feel, and taste what's happening within our community. And I think yesterday was a fine example for somebody who advocates all the time and who's involved, and I thought I knew how people feel. But yesterday was sort of like it put me in check to say, wow. I couldn't imagine living a life like that, right? So I think it's important for our officers to feel their feelings too, so they understand why sometimes people might look really tense. It's not that they have a gun or drugs or something, but it's because of their status here in the United States could be jeopardized by a ticket or so. So thank you for thinking outside the box, Council Member.
Yes, so, I mean, my question was, so when someone goes through the training, the bias training, how do we identify if they're going through the training but they're not embracing it? And if we figure that out, how do we deal with those people that are going through the academy?
Well, we Councilmember Guardado or Vice Mayor Guardado, we in the in-service training that we did with implicit bias, it's very interactive, so we had a huge opportunity to participate in the actual training, and it was very well received. I think there's always times where you're not going to get everyone that's going to maybe have the same belief system, but at least it gives them some tools to understand that there's a different viewpoint, and there was a lot of research to support that training that was brought forth, so it's hard to argue that. But for the most part. At one point, he received a standing ovation from police officers, a whole room full of them. So I think it's been really positive, and we'll just continue to focus on the positive and making a difference.
Well, I mean, I just want to say thank you. I think it's amazing. I've seen the presentation. I think it's great. I love how we're getting away from the military training, right? And being able to like let our police officers be themselves and just engage with the community. I just think that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's necessarily to you all, maybe it's to Milton, but I'd like to know the stats or the diversity of the recruits coming in, just to kind of get a picture of who are the folks that are coming in.
Any other questions? Well, I want to recognize Commander LaRock for all her hard work. I heard that you're going to be retiring pretty soon.
Sir.
Commander, over the 11 years that I've been here, we brought many concerns to you. And instead of fighting the system, you find solutions. And you can tell by this presentation that you're going to leave the academy really well off, and your fingerprints are all over this document. And I just really want to thank you for listening to us, listening to the community, and trying to figure out how to bridge both. And I think that she worked really hard. You can tell that your heart and soul was in this because you care. You care about the men and women in uniform, and you care about our residents that you protect and serve. So it's going to be a loss to the city of Phoenix. There's very few individuals like yourself that give your heart and soul for and believe in what you're doing. So thank you for all those leaders you've created out there and for all your great ideas here. And I think the Assistant Chief wants to say something.
I know this is important to Mr. Mahoney, and I just want to let everybody here know that what she's created is we're super proud of, and it's now intertwined in our DNA. And my promise to you, and I know Chief Kurtenbach and Chief Williams, our promise to you is that we will ensure into the future we carry on the legacy of this mindset of how we teach and learn, and it's going to continue on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of this meeting. Appreciate it.
Thanks. And we're on item number 9. So lately, we've been hearing a lot about vaping in the news and how unhealthy it is. So now we have our individuals from our fire department and county here to give some more information on vaping. It's all yours.
Chairman and members of the subcommittee, my name is Mike Duran, Assistant Chief with Fire. Good morning and thank you for having us. And in coordination with Mr. Mahoney's office, we have invited our partners, Maricopa County Department of Public Health, Executive Director Marcy Flanagan, and Medical Director for Disease Control, Dr. Rebecca Sonnenschein, to talk about some of the current effects and trends in regards to vaping. But before we go into the presentation, I just would like to mention a few things about our partnership and relationship the City of Phoenix has with Maricopa County Department of Public Health over the years. In planning for major events, they've been a great partner with us side by side in making sure we have public health engaged in the awareness of the issues that could impact our events in the City of Phoenix, as well as just the day-to-day operations for us and what our members may encounter during calls for service, 911 calls, or just trends that we may be seeing throughout the nation, internationally, and locally as well. So they've been a great partner for us in the ability to share information and intelligence with us throughout the years, and so we're glad to have them there, and I will turn it over to Executive Director Flanagan and Dr. Sonnenschein.
Thank you very much, Chairman Nowakowski, Vice Mayor Guardado, and Councilmember Garcia. Thank you for having us. At the request of the committee, we have prepared a presentation. Do I need a clicker? Here it is. A presentation on vaping and its health effects. And our goal today is to discuss the health effects of vaping and describe the status of vaping-associated lung injury in the United States and Maricopa County. And as a result of everything that's been happening in the media, what the regulatory changes are. So I'll just briefly go over some e-cigarette basics. Vaping among youth in the United States and Arizona. the health effects of e-cigarettes, and more about vaping-associated lung injury, as well as national, state, and local e-cigarette regulations will be covered by Executive Director Marcy Flanagan. So in brief, e-cigarettes come in many shapes and sizes, and they're devices that heat a liquid into an aerosol that the user inhales. And the vape, which is like the smoke that comes out, contains ultrafine particles that can be inhaled deep into the lungs, as well as nicotine. And as you can see, they come in many shapes and sizes. And the one that you've been hearing about the most, I think in the last couple of years, is made by a company called Juul, which started to produce these tiny vaping devices that look like little USB ports. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've seen such an increase in youth vaping over time. So this is a figure put together by the Surgeon General, and what it shows you is between 2011 and 2018 what youth e-cigarette use has been doing. So you can see there was hardly any use in 2011. If you follow this yellow line, which is for all students, what you can see is that it increased quite a bit in 2013. It started to die down, but between 2017 and 2018, we see dramatic increases in youth vaping. And e-cigarette use among high school students actually increased 78% from 2017 to 2018, which is the biggest increase that we've ever seen. This is actually data from 2015 and 2017, and what you can see is more than half of all Arizona youth have ever tried vaping, and that was true in 2015 and stayed sustained in 2017. This is while smoking cigarettes considerably declined. So we are seeing a huge proportion of our youth that have actually tried vaping. This, even more concerning, is 2018 data from youth in Arizona that shows here in orange the youth rates and the high school rates in Arizona compared to national rates, youth rates of e-cigarette use. And you can see that in all youth in Arizona, about 20%, this is active e-cigarette use in the last 30 days. 20% have used in the last 30 days compared to 14% nationally. And when you look at high school students alone, it's 1 in 4 Arizona youth have vaped in the last 30 days, compared with about 21% nationally. So our issues here are far exceeding those even nationally. So why is vaping such an issue? The health effects of nicotine are one of the most important things to briefly cover. Nicotine is a highly addictive chemical. It increases blood pressure, heart rate, and the risk of heart disease just in itself, and that's without any of the other solvents or other things in the vape. E-cigarettes can deliver much, much higher doses of nicotine than cigarettes can, and you can actually dial up the amount of nicotine that you can get in an e-cigarette to just hundreds of times higher than in regular cigarettes. Nicotine exposure during adolescence has been heavily studied to affect the developing brain, and in this case, that's up to age 25, and it's been shown to cause mood disorders, impairment of attention and learning, which obviously is very important for adolescents, and can permanently lower impulse control, which I think we can all agree we want our adults to have impulse control. So what are the chemicals in vape? And the answer is we really don't know all of the chemicals, and we certainly don't know the health effects of the chemicals in vape at this point. When you look at the flavorants, there are more than 7,000 different flavorants that have been added to vape, and one of them is diacetyl. And what we know about diacetyl is actually from studies among people who worked with it in an industrial setting. It used to be, diacetyl was what caused the butter flavor in popcorn years ago. And what they found out was that individuals who worked in these popcorn factories ended up developing invasive lung disease that caused severely decreased lung function and popcorn lung, and that's where it gets the name. So we can no longer use diacetyl as a food flavoring, but yet it's present in these e-cigarettes. There are a number of other volatile organic compounds, including benzene, which has been shown to be linked to anemia or decreased red blood cells, as well as cancer. And there are many solvents. The one that's been the most studied in both animals and humans is acrolein, which has been shown to be linked to abnormal heart rhythms in humans and even vascular disease in mice. Also formaldehyde and acetaldehyde, and then a number of heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. Both nickel and tin have been linked with lung cancer, and lead, as you know, can cause also anemia and impairment in cognitive development and actually decreased ability to think and learn. So what you've been hearing about in the news, CDC has termed it EVALI, or e-cigarette associated lung injury. And when you look at the national picture, more than 2,000 cases have been reported in 49 states, so it's an issue across the country. The median age is 24, predominantly affecting young people, and it's predominantly among males. They've recorded 39 deaths from 21 states, but the median age at death is a bit higher than the median age of the cases overall at 49. And of 600 people that they've studied with data available, 70% of the cases have used THC-containing products, and about a third of them use exclusively THC. And so what that tells us is that the issue that's happening with lung injury around the country is directly related to THC-containing products, not necessarily the THC, but something that is used with THC rather than just plain e-cigarettes. Looking in Maricopa County, we've had 8 cases reported here locally. We do think that's underreporting because reporting is not required. It is voluntary here in Arizona. The median age here is 25, which is very similar to the national picture. All of them have been hospitalized, another reason that we do think there are more cases out there. 3 required ventilator support in the intensive care unit, and 1 case was readmitted 12 days later with a pneumothorax, or a rupture of the lung. We have 1 death that just came under investigation in the last 24 hours, which is not included in the 8 cases above. That has not yet been confirmed, but I wanted you to be aware of it. 7 of 8 of our cases use THC products chronically, which is many times per day, and only one of the cases had a medical marijuana card, so likely the other individuals got it from illicit sources, but we don't know that for sure. And 2 of the products are pending testing by the FDA. We have not yet received those results. So looking again at what they've learned nationally, they were able to compare cases with EVALI, this particular lung injury, to other similar cases who also use e-cigarettes. And what they found is people who have EVALI were more likely to obtain THC-containing e-cigarettes or vaping products through informal sources, like a dealer, a friend, or off the street. They're more likely to use vaping products more than 5 times per day, so these are chronic users. A lot of them use a THC product called dank vapes, and dank vapes is something that it's an illegal product, but it's not just one company. A lot of different companies are calling their product dank vapes, but what they have in common is that they're not through normal legal channels. And then many of them were more likely to use THC products exclusively instead of in addition to nicotine delivery devices. So what is the cause? And this just came out in the last week, where CDC did some testing of 29 samples of lung fluid from EVALI cases in 10 states, and they found that all 29 samples contained vitamin E acetate. So that seems to be the most likely. They're calling it a very strong culprit of concern, which means that they strongly suspect this is what's leading to lung injury, but they're not convinced that other compounds may not be involved. So they're still looking into other compounds. And the general hypothesis is they think that there are likely solvents that are used in the illicit production of THC products. So hopefully we're going to find out more about that in the future. And now I'm going to pass this over to our Executive Director, Marcy Flanagan, to talk about some of the resulting regulatory changes.
So August 8th, 2016 marks the date that it was illegal to sell to minors e-cigarettes. Prior to that time, there wasn't an age restriction with the vaping products. So, correct, 18 and under for the state of Arizona. Requirements of June of 2019 to register an establishment as a vape store or as a tobacco selling store, submit tobacco health documents, ingredient listings, and include required warning statements on packages and ads. And in 2013, 2014 survey, 81% of current youth e-cigarette users cited the availability of the appealing flavors as their primary reason for using vape products. And in September 2019, imminent ban of e-cigarette flavors except menthol was announced nationally. And Juul in October stopped selling fruit flavors, and in November stopped selling mint flavors, and this is nationally. Nationally, you also have 18 states and over 550 local jurisdictions that have increased the minimum smoking age or sales of tobacco products to 21. Primarily, that's because a lot of research shows that if youth do not start trying tobacco products or smoking before the age of 21, there is a huge decrease in the likelihood or increase in the likelihood that they'll never smoke at all. So raising that minimum age has had a drastic effect in many of those states who have implemented tobacco 21 or T21 policies. Chicago experienced a 36% decrease in the number of young adults 18 to 20 who reported using cigarettes after T21 was implemented, and Oregon and California experienced 9% and 6% respectively for the age range of 18 to 20-year-olds who were smoking once they implemented the T21 policies. In Arizona, there are only 3 jurisdictions that have successfully implemented T21 policies. Those are the cities of Cottonwood, Douglas, and Flagstaff. Pima County just failed to pass an ordinance that was taken before their council in September of 2019. It was also in coordination with the city of Phoenix, and they were hoping to do a joint effort, but the Board of Supervisors in Pima County did not pass that resolution. There were several bills in the last state legislative session, SB 1147, which was going to raise the age to 21, but it was also going to block any local legislation. So this would include any smoke-free parks or other smoke-free ordinances that had been passed locally would have been undone. This was a bill that was backed by the tobacco industry. And then there was House Bill 2357 that would leave the minimum age to 18, but it would redefine tobacco products under ASRS 36-60101, which is the Smoke-Free Arizona Act that most of us know. Currently, the Smoke-Free Arizona Act only covers tobacco, combustible tobacco products, or chew, but it does not include vaping or e-cigarettes. And with that, we'll take any questions you have.
Any questions from my colleagues?
No? It's pretty straightforward, thank you.
Well, you know, what I like to do is maybe have for our next subcommittee some options that we can do here in the city of Phoenix and look into how can we prevent some of these deaths that are happening out there too, right? Maybe work with the county to see what their suggestions are and stuff like that. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much, and Assistant Chief, I've known him since I was back at the diocese, and you were with the Bomberos helping out basically getting the information out there about saving lives and drowning and all that. So congratulations in your new position, and see you grown up throughout the years, right?
Did a lot of good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for allowing us to present on this today.
With that, we're on item number 11.
Sorry. Good morning, Councilman, Chairman Nowakowski, Vice Mayor Guardado, and Councilmember Garcia. My name is Ian White, and on behalf of the Law Department, my client department, the Phoenix Police Department, I'm here to present an item for discussion and possible action related to the placement and sheltering of displaced animals. Sitting next to me this morning is Detective Jemima Schmidt from our PPD Animal Crimes Unit. She's our senior case agent. The current problem or issue that we are facing right now is that the city code, while it addresses the issue of seizing animals in cases of animal cruelty and animal neglect, does not currently address seizing animals for safekeeping purposes in cases where the issue is not about cruelty or neglect. As the slide suggests up there, as you can see up on the screen, we encounter many situations, our police officers do, where a subject has been arrested. It may not be pursuant to animal cruelty or neglect charges, but any other types of charges, and they might happen to have an animal with them, and there's no place to safely shelter that animal. We also see cases where citizens have been injured in car accidents and or have been found deceased, and the same problem where an animal has been left behind. Under our current procedure and under the current existing code, officers would seize those animals and present the responsible person in charge of that animal with a seizure notification that complies with the city code. The current city code triggers formal notification and due process rights for that owner. So the owner would have to come back to Phoenix City Court, request a hearing date, basically to either challenge the seizure and try and get their animal back. It also requires the city's contracted vendor, currently the Arizona Humane Society, to hold the animal for 10 days for the owner to request a hearing in order to return the animal. The problem with this is many, and that's why we are seeking a repeal and replacement of an existing code. The benefits of revising the code would be a decreased length of stay in shelter, certainly for the Humane Society, which is our vendor and holds these animals. The psychological well-being of the animal being confined in a space without its owner for up to 10 days or maybe longer in some cases. Certainly benefits to the city include eliminating unnecessary court procedures, which also has the benefit of decreasing officer overtime pay when they have to attend court when they're not scheduled for duty that day. Decreased use of municipal court resources for scheduling the hearings and notifying all parties involved. Increased capacity to care for additional animals, certainly for the Humane Society, which can run into space restrictions and having the need to move animals swiftly through their system and through ours as well. What we are proposing and recommending is to repeal and replace a current city code provision, 8-15, which currently provides for impoundment of animals and the establishment of city pounds, which is something we do not currently do. This repeal and replace that we are recommending would allow peace officers to seize displaced animals, which is the term we would use for animals in these situations which do not involve cruelty or neglect, but are only being held for safekeeping. So the primary intent here is to safeguard animals for their benefit and welfare, and also to set a hold time to a minimum of 72 hours rather than 10 days or longer, which coincides with ordinances in Tempe as well as at the state level that Maricopa County currently has in place. Subject to your questions.
Any questions?
So I had a question. So here it says set hold time to a minimum of 72 hours. So what happens if, let's say, the owner is in this awful car accident and in 72 hours, you know, they're still in the hospital? Then what happens to the animal after that?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Mayor Guardado, in that situation, our planned procedure would be to give them a notification to their representative to let them know where to pick up the animal. If it is a situation where that person cannot come in 72 hours, We work very closely with the Humane Society, and it's our understanding that in working with them, they will reach out to the affected owner, and if there is a situation where it might take longer than 72 hours, Humane Society will work with that owner to return them to their owner.
And then what if, if the dog or the animal is just abandoned and no one reports, says like, I want to come and pick up my animal within 72 hours, then what happens to the animals?
What happens, I'm sorry.
So let's say, that they find, that there's a car accident or what have you, someone's arrested, and then the person's let go and they don't come for the animal anymore, then what happens to that animal?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Guardado. What would happen in that situation is Humane Society would make arrangements to adopt the animal out.
Thank you.
We do have one card, Tracy Miller.
I think he had.
Oh, did you have a
Yes,
question?
he had.
Sorry. And right after that, sorry about that, Councilmember.
Good morning. I am Tracy Miller. I'm the Field Operations Manager with the Arizona Humane Society. We are in support of this change of ordinance. By amending this ordinance, it would allow the animals after 72 hours to become the Arizona Humane Society's property, which Vice Mayor, you were just asking about. We could then adopt the animal out to its new forever home. We found that 72 hours is more than ample time to return a pet to its owner, even in situations where an individual is incarcerated. Generally, they are back out onto the street and out of the facility within 12 to 24 hours. In the case of owner hospitalizations, like you brought up as well, we will work with that individual or their next of kin. We can also work with whoever their point of contact is to extend that 72 hours if necessary. If it appears it's going to be longer than 72 or a few days after that, we have an emergency services program in our facility that they could continue to use where we would house the animals for that benefit. Ian has mentioned the proposed ordinance has many benefits to the city, but it also has benefits to the Humane Society and to the animals. A couple of those is moving the animals through the system faster, gets them reunited with their owners quicker, or gets them into their new forever home faster. In doing so, the length of stay for our pets will decrease, which reduces their stress level, which also reduces the amount of illnesses that they can get in a shelter environment due to stress-related incidents. And it also allows us to help more homeless and abandoned animals because we're moving the animals through the system quicker. Thank you for the opportunity, and I am available for questions if you have any for the Humane Society.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mrs. Miller?
I do.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. I just saw, I think I saw something on your website, and I know that it was something that was promoted, that we just have an overflow of animals that are not being adopted, right? That we just have that challenge right now, where, people are not adopting animals. So how would we deal with that if we're, and look, and I love animals, right? Like I have a dog. So how do we deal then with that situation where, it seems like we're going to bring in more animals into the Humane Society, and we right now have a challenge that we have too many, right? I mean, I think we're at a point where we're even waiving some fees to try to promote it and trying to motivate people to adopt animals at this point. So how would we deal with that?
There's a couple different scenarios, and that's why this 72-hour ordinance would be so beneficial, because we wouldn't have to continue to hold the animals for 10 days, and we could get those that are adoptable out and adopted faster. We also do adoption specials, which we've had this weekend. We had 50% off on Saturday and Sunday. We had free adoptions for veterans on Veterans Day, and we were able to get over 150 animals out of our shelter, so we do those types of programs. We also do a plea for our fosters. Currently, fosters house almost half of our animals, so we could potentially have 500 animals in shelter, and there'll be 400 animals out in foster homes. So we would do an increased plea for foster families to take care of those animals in those situations. You're welcome.
Councilmember Garcia?
Thank you. My questions are for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think maybe it's a Milton question, but so are we actually planning to create a whole department where we have our own facility, staff time, worry about feeding, cleaning, all that sort of stuff for 72 hours?
Councilmember Garcia, we are not our own facility. Currently, we are contracted with the Humane Society. So they're a contracted vendor to take disposition of animals that we recover either for cruelty purposes or, in this case, non-cruelty purposes. We call them up as part of the contract, and they pick up the animals and hold them in their facility.
So all that would be the same, they would just keep them for 72 hours instead of 10 days before they can make a move?
Correct. In these cases alone, where there's no issues about cruelty, the owner has either been arrested, they're deceased, or in a car accident of some kind, and there's no one responsible at the scene or can be brought to the scene quick enough who can quickly take disposition of that animal. So it requires us to basically impound that animal. What we do in normal police circumstances with any other type of property is we would hold property for safekeeping at our Elwood facility, but since we don't have the ability to do that with animals, we've contracted with the Humane Society to do that.
Yeah, I think having options is a good thing. I think changing it to just, blanket 72 hours is harsh, especially with people being arrested, especially with homeless people being arrested who also have animals. And so I just want to look into, I would want a little bit more stats about how often this happens, how many more, I guess, in combination with how many dogs are actually not being adopted because of those 8 days that they have to wait, and what is our cost for those 8 days?
We can do that.
So would you like to bring this back maybe until we have those questions answered, or?
Yeah, just kind of wanting to see what the scope is actually of the issue, and then also how many people are impacted by it. I'd hate to think of someone going through an arrest, going through a situation, and then coming out and having lost their pet, so in already a traumatic experience, then having the trauma of not having the ability to regain their pet. And so I think in some situations, I think expediency works and it makes sense, and there's an adoptable pet and the person's not gonna be able to be around. And so giving you all the ability to make that decision of when it's sensible to just do the 72, and then when it's a different scenario, we could wait longer. And so I would be more for giving you options for you all to make that decision, rather than just a blanket after 72 hours, all pets are to go through this new track.
So is there a motion to continue this until we get all that information?
Motion to continue?
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on continuing this? With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. So now we're at call to the public, seeing that there's no cards, future agenda items. I think we have a couple that we heard that we're looking at into the policy or guidelines of false alarms, that we're also going to be looking at maybe a future policy for vaping ages and stuff, and also from Councilmember Garcia, looking into a report on our recruits, on the diversity of our recruits. And I'd like to add on that maybe upper management, lower management, and all officers, if we can have a report on the diversity of our police. Anything else for the future?
Mr. Chairman, slated for December, state and federal legislative agenda update. Government relations will be gearing up for the next session of the General Assembly. Median ordinance review was something that Councilmember Williams requested. There's also an item on pedestrian safety. Then there's a stand-up with the Public Defender's Office, and there's an agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Office of Inspector General, and then there is a donation to accept services and materials to upgrade the police department canine kennels. So it'll be a full agenda.
Well, thank you so much, and with that, meeting is adjourned.